All right, so welcome to episode 2. If you're watching this episode here, you're not watching it because you're interested just in what I talk about with EdyTalks or EdyTalks. It's not just about flow or consciousness or leadership development or human development. It's because you're probably interested in starting your own podcast. So right now you could be potentially watching this on a video platform or simply just audio. You're either on Spotify or iTunes, or maybe you're watching a clip of this on any of my social media streams. Whatever it is, hopefully right now you are listening or you're going to listen to the full podcast, to the full episode, where I'm going to dive into and answer 3 questions. The first question is, how long should my podcast be? Now, that, it depends who you ask. And my thing with how long should your podcast be, you should always remember this. There is the podcasting part, which is the talking part, which I enjoy. And I think anybody interested into going into podcasts would be super interesting. But there's also an editing part. And this is the part where a lot of people don't really talk about. And when you go and hire some services out there, one of the reasons why they're so expensive is because when you record a video podcast, there's a lot of editing involved. There's a lot of gigabytes. And whether you're filming in 4K, 2K, 1080p, whatever it is, there's a rendering process, there's an editing part. There might be areas of your podcast, areas that you want to remove, or maybe the lighting was something wrong with lighting, or your hair wasn't done right, whatever the case may be. That's the reason why sometimes podcasting can be very expensive. But it doesn't mean that it's not affordable, because you can buy the equipment yourself and do it at home. I have my own studio at home. I'm actually here at home right now. I installed these pretty cool walls myself. So you can do it at home and it's super affordable. But, my purpose of being here and developing episode 2 is to essentially discuss with you guys questions that I asked myself when I first started podcasting, and I am specifically creating these 3 episodes, the next episode, the last episode, 3rd episode, answering some of the most common questions that people always have for me, and hopefully through listening through episode 1, episode 2, and episode 3, you might make that ultimate decision to either move forward or to say, you know what, maybe this is something that I'm going to put aside and I'm not going to do. But I always say, look, a podcast can be, and usually according to research, what it shows is between 15 and 25, 15 and 30 minutes, because you always have to remember, when will people listen to your episodes? Probably when they're driving on long drives, when they're going to work, or they're coming home, or maybe if they work somewhere where they're allowed to listen to music or whatever, that's when they're going to be listened to. But oftentimes people don't have 2 hours, they don't have 3 hours, or for that matter, an hour to listen to a full episode. So you want to keep it short. And again, this is just a very short recommendation. And of course, you can go as far as 45 minutes to an hour. But my ultimate recommendation for most people is 45 minutes to an hour, because it's plenty of time, especially if the content is seriously good and is seriously engaging. I think it's a very good time frame for people to absorb the information and take it with them, because you also have to remember, when you first open this episode or you look at the episode, one of the first things that you want to look at is, how long is this episode? And right now, my strike zone right now for the next episode, this episode and episode 1, it's under 15 minutes. I'm providing information for you, and the purpose of this is to engage with you, for you to receive my energy, to listen to me. I'm the product, right? And so you're listening to me, and does this guy sound interesting? Is he monotone? How is his frequency? How is his vibration? Can this guy potentially help me? And I need to make sure that I am bringing my best self, because my promise to you is that I want to sprout the best version of yourself through my mentoring, through my coaching. The next question is, how often should I publish? Now, the important thing about publishing, the important thing about podcasting is very important here: consistency. you have to remember that if you say you are going to post one episode a week, you have to post one episode a week, because people, or let me rephrase this, you will develop a relationship with your listeners, and you are making a promise to them. If you say, I'm going to post one episode every week, you have to post every week. If you say you're going to post an episode every Wednesday at 12 o'clock, you have to post every Wednesday at 12 o'clock. It's one of those things that if you completely drop the ball, and if you effectively completely mess this up, you're not going to have an audience. So it's very important that whatever commitment it is, or whatever promise it is that you make to your listeners, that you keep it. My recommendation is once a week. There's 52, 53 weeks in a year. That's about 53 episodes. And there's no reason why you cannot produce one episode a week. If you are thinking of going into podcasting, I think one episode a week is perfect. Just make sure that one episode that you are producing is the ultimate best, and that you're going to bring in your best game. You're going to bring in the best content. Whatever it is. Now, the second question is, they always ask about, should I start a solo podcast, or should I start a podcast, interviewing people? It's really all up to you. I think a lot of folks out there, they use the Joe Rogan experience. I love listening to Joe Rogan. This guy's my idol. I love the setup. And one of the best, and every time I talk to folks, I always say, just think about Joe. How does he behave? Who is he during his podcast? This guy is just himself, 100%. He is as authentic as he can be. So when you're thinking, what do I want to do with my podcast? You really don't have to decide whether it's just going to be just you. You can open yourself to individual or interviews, but you do have to make a decision. I would strongly, and I would urge you, make a decision whether it's gonna be just you're gonna do a solo podcast, or you're gonna be interviewing people, because that also sets the platform, that sets the foundation for your podcast. And if you start solo, and usually if you start solo, you're going to discuss topics, you're going to provide information, and then all of a sudden you bring somebody in. I don't know. It's an interesting dynamic. Can it happen? Of course it can happen. But I think it's better to decide what you are going to do. In my case, for example, what I'm talking about right now is just podcasting, and I talk about flow state. I coach people. And so, the platform that I'm going to build in my podcast, it's going to be a little bit of both. And I have to find a good balance of it. And I'm actually considering starting a second podcast, primarily to interview people, but we'll see, but it's very important that you make those decisions up front. And I can certainly help you with that as well, with content creation, and really trying to figure out what it is that you want to do for yourself, and why is it that you want to start this podcast? Because at the end of the day, one of the most conscious things that I sit down with my students is always the why. Why do you want to establish a dialogue with people? What is it that you're trying to communicate? Is this something for you? Is this something for people? What interests you? Because at the end of the day, to have an effective podcast, you got to be an effective communicator. And I'm not trying to scare anybody out here, but it's important that you understand what it is to develop a relationship with your listeners. And not a lot of people understand how that works, how to establish and how to develop, how to grow a relationship with listeners. And again, this is another selling point for me. It's important. And I said it in episode 1, asking for help, hiring for help is extremely important. You can either figure it out yourself and take a year or maybe a year and a half building yourself up to it, or you can hire somebody to help you with it, with the technology, with the speaking aspect, with the studio, with everything. And you can cut out a year and a half of just trial and error and compacted everything into a 2-week to a month period. And now you are just providing your best self, and you can sprout the best self of yourself. Or by hiring some help, then you realize, maybe this isn't really what I wanted to do. And you just saved yourself a year and a half of just wondering, figuring things out, whether you want to do this or not. Because the worst thing that you can do is waste your time in something that you just decided and you changed your mind years later that this really wasn't what I wanted to do. But I can tell you this, if you have the itch for wanting to start your podcast, I would tell you, do it. Do not question that, because there's something within you telling you, do it, do it, do it. And just dive into that, research, go into it, have a discussion with somebody, with your parents, with your friends, with your partner, whoever it is, because if you have the urge to communicate, you probably do have to communicate. That wasn't just an idea, because not anybody randomly thinks, oh, I want to start a podcast. No, you have to be pretty, comfortable with yourself. And if you're already considering, go all the way. Like, seriously, just go all the way and do it. Don't think about it, because whatever it is that you think about too much, you just never really do it anymore. And if you are right now listening to me on this second episode, I would strongly recommend that you move forward with it. Set up a meeting with me. Reach out to me on one of my social media sites, on YouTube, wherever it is. Set up an appointment with me. We can sit down. We can talk about it. And allow yourself, give yourself that opportunity, because, often we get these ideas, and we call them, some people may call them these crazy ideas. Some people might say, don't do it. I don't think you can do it. Listen, if it was your idea, it means that a part of you believes in you. A part of you knows that it can do it. A part of you, an essence of you, an energy of you is saying, I believe in you. So listen to that inner voice. Don't put that voice away, because it might be something that you're going to regret. And if this is for business purposes, I strongly recommend that you start your own podcast, because you can do 5-10 episodes and you can have a discussion about your product, about your business. And now if you're trying to gain more business, if you're working with a potential customer, you can refer them to your podcast, where you can elaborate a little bit further on whatever your product it is. Whether you are in the health industry, sports, business, whatever it is, it gives you an opportunity to sell yourself indirectly without you being there. Just sending a link and saying, hey, look, just listen to my quick podcast. It doesn't have to be 30 minutes. My podcast, my episodes, right now the first 3 episodes are under 15 minutes, and they're designed specifically that way because I'm selling myself to you. So I got to bring my best self. I need you to see that my energy, my capacity, my ability is able to sit down here with you and coach you and make you your best self. So whether it's technology, whether it's a studio, whether you're all the way in New York because I'm in California, or whether you're in Florida, whether you're in Texas, whether you're in Central America, South America, Canada, wherever it is that you are, we can go live through my equipment and we can start your first episode. I can coach you right through it. And I promise you that you will find your voice, and that voice that has been trying to scale itself within you will come out, and you will see it, and you will elevate yourself. And whether it's your product, you will elevate your product too, but give yourself that opportunity. And if you are, whatever business it is that you're working in right now, find someone that's a great communicator and bring that person on board. I can also provide that training for your employees as well if need to. But open yourself to podcasting, because podcasting is a really good avenue. It's a really good marketing strategy to add to your current marketing plan, and it's so cost effective as well. So if you have any questions, please reach out to me. I have links everywhere. Thank you so much for joining this episode. There's going to be a third episode, and I'm going to continue answering a few other questions. Other than that, I am here, your host, Edy, for EdyTalks or EdyTalks, where you can find me everywhere on social media or on YouTube. Thank you so much for listening to me.